My PhD is in mechanical engineering, just for clarity. Let me stand on the protocol that I've already been established. I recognize our ED, of course, and the deputy ED, but I also recognize some of the NCHE council members that are in the house. I see my vice is also in the house, and I would like to also just express my gratitude for NCHE for preparing the presentation. Madam Demos, you did a very wonderful work. The presentation is so exhausting that I've decided to cut it down to try to fit in within the 30 minutes that have been allocated. So I will skip a few things, and so I will go through the background, the human resource challenges in Namibia, and I think that for me is more crucial that we understand the challenges, because then the strategy is based on those challenges. If we do not define the challenges properly, then the strategies would be misaligned as well. And then the niche industry development areas that we identified, skills, audit, survey, results. I will go deeply into that. Matching demand to current supply. That's a very interesting one, and I would like to discuss that. I will probably not have time to go through the goals, objectives, and interventions, because the whole strategy will be made available, and you have a full document that will have all the goals, objectives, and interventions. Then we'll look at the implementation coordination, and then a little bit on the risk management if time permits. So in 2012, the government decided to have or adopted what we call the National Human Resource Plan for the period of 2012 to 2022. But in order to implement this or to achieve this, you also need a strategy. So this strategy is as a result of this. And the purpose is to guide government in terms of skills development and in terms of looking at the demand and the supply side, and that these two must be speaking to. What are the critical skills that need to be developed so that we can develop our economy in accordance to the needs? Already we've had curriculum must be driven from the demand side. So in 2018, the Ministry of Higher Education, Technology and Innovation launched the formulation of the National Human Resource Development Strategy. And the aim is to address the key education training challenges. So it's focusing on the skills development. You know, interestingly, whereas developed countries are busy buying off our own skilled labor, at times the developing countries are not paying very, very close attention to developing their own skills and keeping them. And so I believe that this document or this initiative is aimed towards trying to make sure that we have the skills set and that we keep them. So the method was, how do we went about this? Of course, we engaged some experts, and first they tried to synthesize all the various documents that have alluded to the various types of skills that are required. And then there was a review of global perspective. Where is the world going to? What are the skills that are needed? Of course, you know, some skills are dying, but each time there are multiple skills that are being developed. So that needs to be looked into, and then the skill audit was conducted to just give us an idea of what skills do we have in the country. And then we identify technical skills, professional knowledge, and competencies. And again, when we start talking about competencies, the TBET will come out again. TBET always is a topic when you start talking about skills. Development of strategies, which will then meet these challenges. The method also followed the following. There was a literature review, collection of an analysis of data from the various ministries, the National Planning Commission, the Statistics Office, agency, and NCHE, and all the other entities. And then there was an enterprise skills survey, and something that came up very surprisingly is the fact that we do not have an enterprise database, a national enterprise database. So it was really a revelation, I would say, for me going through the document. Then consultation with key stakeholders through various focus groups. These documents have been presented already to targeted broad stakeholders, and also there was a workshop that was carried out, and the last was the meeting with the Prime Minister, where she also made her own inputs to the document. So the process have gone really quite advanced, but it is still work in progress. It will soon get to cabinet, and then it will be become a document that can be used. So let's look at the challenges that and for some of you it will be like, like a crack machine, this music is repeating. We know most of this, but let's see. The first is the low access to early childhood education and low quality of general education. And under this, they discovered that only about 40% of kids that are supposed to go to the early school access this facility. It means that 60% of these kids do not access that. So already, you can see from early childhood, we are already having problems. Then the other main things I would like to point out is the low completion rate of our secondary school, lower and upper secondary school. And of course, these are the people that are feeding into our universities and our vocational training. And if we have such very high drop rates, then that already begins to have a ripple effect. A large number of the dropouts in education are individuals with special needs, disabilities, or those from marginalized communities. So this again requires us to reach out to those group of people. The second challenge, which was also identified, is the fact that TVET and higher education institutions are not responding adequately to the demands of the job market. And you will see as we go on that at times certain things are perceived, and when you look at the data, you start asking more questions. Are we really identifying the real problem? And you see why I'm saying this. So first, it is agreed that the TVET system is characterized by weaknesses that leads to graduates that are not aligned to the workforce. It was also reported that issues pertaining to the inappropriate implementation of the competence-based learning is an issue. And I was just discussing with Aman just during tea, and I was like, do we have examiners? Because when you talk of competency-based, there are special skills for examiners. These are highly sorted people that are able to say, yes, this person have met the skill set and he is X, Y, Z. So you can already see that we have issues with regards to that. It is said that, however, current information needs to be examined to ensure the issue has been resolved. This issue, whether it's been resolved or not. Then at the higher education level, the STEM skills are in undersupply and the non-STEM skills are oversupply. Personally, when it comes to higher education, and this is not the document now, I'm talking personally, oversupply is a good problem. Undersupply is a terrible problem. So even though we need to beef up on the STEM skills, we also need to take note that there might be some very critical non-STEM areas that we are not really developing. And that, for me, is very important. Now, these problems are the so-called perceived mismatch between training and employment opportunities. The next challenge is the youth unemployment skills mismatch and inadequate integration of entrepreneurship into teaching and learning. And this, if you've been in the educational fraternity for a while, definitely you know that this is a problem we'll be trying to address through various ways, involving industry in curriculum development, trying to incorporate entrepreneurship even in engineering programs. Students still have to do entrepreneurship and trying to change teaching methodologies to bring in project-based learning and all of that. But let's see what the study says, that a significant portion of unemployed youth have secondary school education, but they lack skills, no vocational skills. Then the university graduate also find it difficult to join the labor market. We are seeing more and more increase in university graduates not getting employment. And the Namibian workforce is expanding at a faster rate than the economy can provide employment opportunities, which means that the areas that are growing are not the areas that the skills are being developed. I think that's where I still use the word perceived, that's where the perceived mismatch is coming up. And then salary employment alone can no longer respond to the growth in the supply of this workforce. And so I think self-employment is something that we need to begin to train for. How do we train people to be able to create the jobs? The fourth challenge is the low employee motivation and lack of continuous professional development for staff in human resource development system. This problem is big. And it's the poor career management practices. Yesterday I was discussing with somebody who just said to me that he was trying to find out, so what can I do? What training can I go through in my workplace so that I can make progress? There is none. And it was an unsolicited conversation. So career development is very important. And we realize that a lot of people do not have, a lot of companies, a lot of agencies do not have those type of career management services, such as Teachers Resource Center or the teaching clusters do not function properly or at all. So this is also a problem. If you join an institution at a particular level, there should be enough training and competencies that you can build up in order to move on. The next challenge is the limited linkages among government institutions, lack of research and its usage in the labor market. In this regard, what is happening is there is no link between the research that we are doing and the labor market. And because this link is not there, it creates a problem, because research is supposed to help industry, and industry is supposed to bring the problems to research, and research is supposed to, so there's supposed to be some kind of synergy. But there is a disconnect among entities that are involved in the supply side, preventing the human resource system from working seamlessly. The provision for data collection, storage, and retrieval is also more or less like not well coordinated. So it is very difficult to get the data, because you need data in order to make a more informed decision with regards to skills. If we say we need engineers, there are a lot of different types of engineers. What type of engineering are we talking about? So to have that data is very important. So to have, in some cases, articulation between learning systems is so unreliable. We have discussed, okay, I've had the good practice of Kota and UNAM, and I know that there is some kind of articulation from the end courses to the BTech program in engineering at NUST. However, we do not offer end courses in Namibia, which means for students to articulate from a polytechnic to a BTech and probably to a BEng, they will need to go to South Africa to get an end certification for them to be able to do that. The supply side is not sufficiently linked to the demand side. I think this is also as a result of the lack of data speaking to one another. There is currently no register of enterprise, which is what I mentioned earlier, making it challenging to conduct enterprise survey. Then the sixth challenge is the limited financing for human resource development and need for diversifying funding for sustainability. For sure, funding is a challenge in every country, and for us in particular, it has been a big challenge. We have a beautifully crafted funding formula, and if you've ever looked at that funding formula, it's the most scientific way to allocate resources to the institutions. Well crafted, it requires a lot of data to compute how much is required for the institution to operate, but the resources are not just there to go around. We know everybody goes to government to try to get the money, so the resources are not there, but we have the methods to do that. The funding is not sustainable. The demand for student financial assistance is also high. I think I met with the NSFAF CEO. I don't know how you survive, but I know that just to provide finance to students for studying is also quite a challenge. And in addition, there is need to develop cost-sharing initiatives that do not undermine equity consideration. So after looking at all these, analyzing and arriving at the challenges, there are what referred to as the niche industrial areas that were developed. Remember that this was initiated since 2018. So by the time the study was rounding up, other new areas started to pop up that needs to be included. So what we have here is what was identified during the study, which is commercial agriculture, construction, information and communication technology, tourism and conservation. We have transport and logistics, automotive, and then renewable energy. Now, renewable energy, these days, we have to put in the green hydrogen, because without renewable energy, there is no green hydrogen. Green hydrogen must be a hydrogen produced 100% by renewable energy. So no renewable energy, no green hydrogen. So we cannot delink them. So I think here we decided to link it, even though the green hydrogen discussion came much later. And then there was a skill audit that was done, and this is also a little bit disappointing, because out of 977 enterprises that were identified, we only received responses from 192. And if you go down to automotive, you will see that the number of answers received is just 1. How significant is this data? So data must speak, as the coordinator was pointing out, and for us in academic, of course, if you want to convince me about anything, you must show me the data that supports the argument, but also you need to interrogate the data. My executive dean, I don't know whether he's here, he's the one that normally talks about data, yes? How many? He said, if I say that 50% of my class passed my exam, and you're like, only 50%, but you are not interrogating the data. 50%, what about if I have 2 students, and only one passed and the other one failed? Then now you see how, so data makes sense when you interrogate it further. Thank you for allowing me to use that harmony. So, that's the data. So matching the demand and supply, the survey results, and I didn't go through the survey results, but you see the survey results show that the range of occupation is quite extensive that need to be covered, and it also is from very high skill to low and medium skills. It is also noted, and this is very important, and that's why I think there is a kind of a contradiction. It is noted that local training institutions offer programs that include skills related to the occupations identified as difficult to hire. So what is the problem? if the universities train the skills that industry is saying we have difficulty to find ABC, but the university is saying no, but we are training ABC, then there must be something else. And well, my education side is beginning to pop out. Having a good curriculum and having good facilities and even having good lecturers is not enough. The method of teaching, how do you incorporate certain competencies into the pedagogy? I think that is crucial. Anyway, it is noted that the local training institutions provide all these programs. Similarly, the skills demand identified using the National Planning Commission demand and supply model also points to skills currently supplied by the training institutions, which means the skills that we require, the skills that industry is saying is hard to hire, the skills that NBC says we need, we actually train them. So, food for thought, something we need to discuss. Why is it difficult for industry to hire? Then information on work permits and visas is vague. So if a guy comes into the country to get a work permit to sell things, and a professor comes into the country, gets a work permit to teach, let's say, physics, nuclear physics. Home Affairs do not segregate. There is nothing to say this fellow came in to teach this skill, which is lacking with this. So we have difficulty to identify what are the skills that we are bringing in, because that will also help us to say, okay, if a lot of the skills we are bringing in is this type of skills, then we need to do something about that so that we can train and develop. But we don't get those, that information is not available from Home Affairs, and that makes it very difficult to analyze this mismatch. The survey also indicated the importance of employability skills in employers' decision to hire someone, and I think this is now where the crux of the matter is. Because you can have a graduate, but if he doesn't have the type of competencies that they are talking about, for example, problem-solving initiative, taking responsibility for action, that's independent study and being able to do things, teamwork, I think that's where now the issue begins to show that, okay, maybe these are the reasons why, even though we're training these people, but industry is having difficulty to hire them because this type of competencies are not available. Well, the coordination will be done, of course, through our ministry, and we're hoping that there will be an entity that will be established that will coordinate this, and we're hoping also that there will be different niche areas, skills, sector that will further investigate within their own sector precisely the number of people that are required in the country, so that this information can be used for curriculum development, for funding even, to ensure that we are able to develop those skills. The risk management, of course, finance is one, and revenue generation. Government must first find ways to increase funding, and it has to come from multiple sources. I know that in the wrap-up, the R&D guys were told they should try to get funding from external sources, which is good and which I would also strongly encourage. But I thought they also said that if there can be some kind of levy that can support research, because the research is supposed to focus on the economy of this country. We research to support any company that is working within Namibia. And I think that those companies have the responsibility to also support training and research, because they are the consumers of the skills. We know of the green hydrogen, they require X number of workforce, and they are now putting the pressure on the universities to begin to train for that workforce. But they are also supporting by giving scholarship to those students. So I think when we talk about finance, we need to look at it from multiple sources. There is no country that can provide 100% free education. If you want to really charge for training an engineer, I'm sorry I have to use engineering because that's the field that I know more, you cannot. No individual can pay fully to receive a full training as an engineer or even for medicine or pharmacy, some of those trainings. So they actually subsidized. No matter the cost, they are actually subsidized by government by providing the facilities, the laboratories. So these are things that we need to think about. Well, attitude and behavior, I think we need some psychologists to help us how to go about attitude change, but that's also very important. Continuous professional development and capacity building is crucial. It's also a risk factor. If this is not done, then there will be an issue, consolidation of key stakeholders. There is a need to strengthen coordination within and across ministries and to build strong partnership with the communities and the private sector. Everybody needs to come together, and we need to have a systematic way of collecting data so that we can use this data to plan. Thank you very much.